situation. Either India takes the trophy or Australia brings them home. We still feel, yep, we have got it.
It's not England, we're okay.
When that announcement was made that people would be fined and jailed if they come to the country, probably at that time there was a lot of backlash that happened, and government came out in its safeguard as well. Do you think that people have accepted it, that there was...
You know, we were dealing with a new outbreak of the virus in a very, very tragic situation. As you know, in India we had the Delta outbreak. We had to stop the travel to get a hold of our quarantine because we were seeing the increase in the quarantine, in the infection rate. This year the Cabinet set aside about 50-something thousand, still very high, more than a normal year, and that will help alleviate the backlog. But we have so many people, coaches, staff, people from Australia in India.
In India, yeah.
Working all through the system.
Any of the message for all the Australians sitting overseas, or any of the people around the globe who want to come back to Australia?
We've got huge demand for students from India, from China, from the region. Everyone wants to come here and study, and we know they're going to come back in big numbers, and we're looking forward to that. You know, he went home, we gave him an exemption to go home to visit his parents' funerals. Right. And then he died, leaving his 2 children, you know, small children behind and his wife behind. We have our students have been prioritised over to tourists at the moment, and then tourists are next after that. So we'll have an announcement about that soon, but we want to get the students moving, of course, and students will have a priority before tourists, but then tourists are envisaged shortly after that as well.
Good day everyone, my name is Navneet Anand from Voice Ajkal, local and global and Fiji Times, Australia. Honourable Alex Hawke, Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs. Thank you once again for giving us the time. When did you actually realise that you want to get into politics?
Well, my dad brought me up to value public service, and I always saw that as something I wanted to do. I was in the military when I was young. I was an army officer, and then entered politics quite young. So it was something my dad gave to me. But I was elected to Parliament at 29, so very young, and you know, served in the military, worked in management before that, but yeah, very young.
So not many people know about your life before you actually joined the politics. You want to share something about it?
Well, sure. I grew up here in Parramatta, very close by to my electorate. You know, it's a very multicultural centre, Parramatta, also the second CBD of Sydney. So very important, a lot of different communities. I grew up with them. It was very good for me.
Well, with this pandemic going on for around almost 2 years, we have seen lots of ups and downs. There were some of the delays with the vaccination in the beginning, but in the end, it turned out to be wonderfully well. I think we are more than 90%. It picked up very quickly. What do you think? Why it was delayed in the beginning?
Well, Australia has always had historically high rates of vaccination acceptance. We're always in the high 90s, one of the highest rates in the world. It's all about Australia, really. We're a very cohesive society, very tolerant, but very accepting of science and medicine. And I felt we were always going to get into the 90s and high 90s. And we're over 90% with our first dose, over 83% double dosed. We're leading the world, as you say now. And I think we'll probably go into the high 90s of vaccination for COVID as well. We'll be very, very strongly vaccinated. Now, in the beginning, of course, many countries had much worse outbreaks than Australia. So some of our vaccines were actually taken off ships in Italy, for example, and given out to people that needed them. We had zero COVID in Australia at many points of the pandemic. So those things, I think, are quite natural in the course of events. Still, the amount of cases and deaths in Australia compared to the rest of the world is very, very low. So we've gone very well as a country all through the pandemic to manage it the way we have. It's come at a cost of many things, but socially, health-wise, we've had almost no COVID. We've had very relatively low amount of death compared to most countries in the world, and we've got the highest vaccination rate. So Australia's done very, very well.
Before I move on, Australia has won the World Cup T20.
Fantastic.
You know, coming from somewhere we were seeing the favourites were different, but Australia ending up bringing the trophy back home. That is a wonderful news.
Well, the first time, so it's about time, and we've got David Warner had a good game. We're very happy. Australians always think of ourselves as the best cricketing country in the world, but That's not always quite true, but we always like to believe we are. So it's nice to get that confirmation.
Well, I tell you,
at all levels of the game.
Yeah, what I feel is Australia is the best team to play under pressure. Right, being born in India and having seen cricket as a religion in the country, and moving on to Australia, we love cricket.
For India, but for Australia, it's been a source of pride. A small country, very good at cricket, but it's a pride as well. We have so many people, coaches, staff, people from Australia in India.
In India, yeah,
working all through the system.
For people like us, it's a win-win situation. Either India takes the trophy or Australia brings them home. We still feel, yep, we have got it.
It's not England, we're okay.
There has been short of workers in certain fields like hospitality, hospitals, and few different areas as well. And number of students we have not been able to bring as compared to what we used to do. Obvious reasons, COVID has been the situation. But the competitive countries like Canada and England have been intaking the students coming in. What are the plans? I do see New South Wales are already open, students coming in without quarantine, and hopefully rest of the states would do that as well. So what do you have in mind in terms of department thinking to bring back the numbers in?
Yeah, well, you're right. Part of our success has been those closed borders. We've allowed students to study online, offshore, and they're still doing that. It's very successful. They're there in the classes. It's working well. The government has said that we will allow those students to count their hours and their study towards a work and visa once we open the borders. We're going to make some more announcements about international students in coming weeks and months. We're very comfortable about that. We miss our students. We have a lot of them here normally, and the numbers have been falling month on month. And people go home, obviously. We haven't been getting the new intake. We miss them to study education. We miss their contribution to our workforce. We miss just the general population, like we miss our tourists and other temporary visa holders. We're looking forward to having them back, actually. So New South Wales has got the pilot. It's only 500 a fortnight though. That's still a small amount. It's relatively slow, but as we see the borders, I think, unlocking, when we get to phase D of our national plan, more students will be coming in greater numbers and back to normal. But, it's good New South Wales has started the journey. We will obviously work with the New South Wales government about that pilot. But once we've proven that they can come back with everybody else, then we'll be able to have more numbers.
I think the numbers that were going to Canada and England only for the reason the borders were closed for Australia, I hope we see that numbers coming back to the country.
Yeah, that's what I mean when we miss them. We miss them in all ways. But, Australian education is one of the best products in the world, and people know that. We've got a great society here. People want to come here for the experience. It's close to home. It's, a very safe society. Your children can come to Australia, study, be perfectly safe, get a world-class education, have great contacts and links for the future as well. So we think that's very competitive. We know Canada and England are doing some offerings. We're watching that space very carefully. We'll have announcements to make as well. But the demand is huge. We know as soon as we open, we've got huge demand for students from India, from China, from the region. Everyone wants to come here and study. And we know they're going to come back in big numbers, and we're looking forward to that.
I remember talking to you over the phone when that announcement was made that people would be fined and jailed if they come to the country. Probably at that time there was a lot of backlash that happened, and government came out in its safeguard as well. Do you think that people have accepted it, that there was a small, I don't know to call it a mistake or call it whatsoever, so has been rectified?
Oh, I do. Look, Australia made a very difficult decision at that time, but we were dealing with a new outbreak of the virus in a very, very tragic situation. As you know, in India we had the Delta outbreak. We had to stop the travel to get a hold of our quarantine because we were seeing the increase in the infection rate in the flights from India. And the reason that was a very good decision in the end was because that pause for about a month allowed us to get on top of the quarantine arrangements. Which
probably the wording wasn't too accepted by the...
I don't think so. The media is terrible. The wording was fine. I did a lot of community consultation. But remember here, tragically, we saw what happened in India. I mean, tragic situation, and hundreds of thousands of people died. A lot of people's relatives from here in Australia, their parents, their grandparents, have died. Here in my electorate just down the road, I always remember Govind Kant.
Yeah.
A great man. He went home. We gave him an exemption to go home to visit his parents' funerals. and then he died, leaving his 2 children, small children behind and his wife behind. He would, if he could take that back, he would. If his parents could take that back, they would too. They would want him to not leave Australia. So it was difficult, it was tough, but we believe it saved lives, both ends. People here and people in India as well coming back here. So while we've been tough and it's been difficult, Australia's done it so well. I know India, if they could have contained it, they never would have let it out either. It's very difficult to do in a large country, and in the subcontinent, of course, it moves around differently. But here in Australia, we have the luxury of being an island. We can stop, the disease from entering until we get vaccinated, and we can save, as they say, maybe 30,000 lives in Australia on the same ratios of deaths. That's a lot of people.
And every single life matters, as we say.
I always think of Govind and what happened because it's so tragic. It is such a sad situation.
It has been brought to my notice that some of the temporary visa holders, like 485 and all that, they went overseas and they got stuck because of obvious reasons and were not allowed to come back to the country. I think government was thinking about giving them some sort of exemption by extending their visas or giving them a chance to come back and redo whatever application they are eligible for. Any work has been finalized on that?
Yeah, so Navneet, we've worked very hard on this. I've said on a couple of occasions we'll have something to say about it soon. The situation throughout the pandemic, Australia has generally, as a principle, extended concessions, increased the amounts of time, been very fair to people. We understand it's through no fault of their own. In many cases, people who are in different locations were offshore, couldn't return to the country. So we'll have it very soon. We'll have something to say about it. So I look forward to that. I'm not allowed to announce it today, but we are doing a lot of work on this, and we do understand the situation very well.
Let me tell all the audiences, as Minister said, some announcement is coming. Even I would be waiting along with you to wait and see what that announcement comes out. Hope sustains life. Minister, thank you so much. Some of the onshore student applications have been taking longer than the usual ones. It could be probably the shortage of staff, but some of the application has exceeded over 18 months as well. Any particular reasons that department is holding on that applications to make some decisions?
Well, look, the whole processing system during the pandemic has been thrown out of normal kilter. So you have a lot of different distortions in the processing times in different subclasses. Obviously, with borders closed, priorities have changed. In terms of processing, we've spent a lot of time processing exemptions through the exemption system, outward and inward bound, that's the priority. And then visas underneath humanitarian, we had the Afghanistan issue.
Yes.
So things have changed. Again, once the borders are open, they're open now for Australian citizens and permanent residents and immediate family, who we've changed the definition to include parents, which is good. But once we get further down the border opening, we're going to resettle those processing times. And there will be enough visa processing power to catch up and make the necessary application decisions in a faster time. So we're very aware of that too. We're very close to the end of this period. It's been a long time, but we're a few weeks and maybe short months away from moving on all of those issues.
That would be wonderful. Talking about the partner visa applications, the processing times have shown around 24 months, but at the same time, the fee seems to be a little on the higher side as well. The Australian residents and citizens are feeling the heat. Any chance we can see that fee being reduced for the partner visa applications at all?
Probably not, I'd have to say, Navneet. And I'll tell you one good reason, because we had record demand in partner visas for Australia. There are more visa applications than we've ever had, so not a time to reduce the fee because we've got more demand than ever. Last year we processed the highest amount of partner visas in 30 years, over 70,000, which is roughly almost half of the immigration program were just partner visas in 1 year, to catch up, a record year in 30 years. This year the Cabinet set aside about 50-something thousand, still very high, more than a normal year. And that will help alleviate the backlog, but we have huge demand in applications. So the fee doesn't seem to be an issue. People are desperate to become a partner of an Australian, and it's We welcome it. We welcome it. We're processing them in record numbers.
If we talk about the global processing unit, what I do understand, taking some of the workload from Australia, giving it to the high commissions and offices offshore, but there are plus and minus of the both things. Sometimes what has happened is, like the partner visa application, as I said, when an offshore case officer is trying to contact a sponsor here for an interview, at times we see them calling at odd times. It may be 4 o'clock in Indian time, but it is 9:30 p.m. according to Sydney Times. I just wanted to bring it back to your notice. I don't know whether it has already been brought or not. If those timings can be managed a little in a better way, that would be too good.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's an important point. Generally, the offshore processing centres function very well, efficiently wise. We get good value out of them. They process in record time. And often it's the complexity of cases that visa versus demand that can sometimes slow down applications. You mentioned 24 months. That's not the experience of a lot of people with partner visa. It can be much shorter than that. Sometimes, though, if people don't have the right identification, if they don't have the police checks, if they have things that are delaying the application, it can take a lot longer. But generally, they work well.
But there are cases that have been delayed.
Very much so. And that can happen in different cohorts for different reasons. But I do understand we always look to improve our systems. We have a big tender for a major computer system, which will, of course, take us into the digital era in relation to visa processing as well. And that is a major tender that will, again, take the next evolution, where a lot of visa decisions can be done automated, so without human involvement. And then, of course, complex cases, ones that are identified through all of the different options available through technology today, can then go to case officers in Australia. But therefore, that will be a step change in improvement of processing visas as well.
We look forward to have the best possible systems for the country, but at the same time, I thought I better bring it back to your notice. If those case officers, rather than calling at 9:30 p.m. Sydney time, if those timings can be altered according to Australian times rather than the offshore times, that would be wonderful. TGA approved countries, vaccinations has almost been done in most of the world. We have started seeing parents and Australian citizens coming back. Students, as you said, you want to make some announcements soon. Tourists is another industry that we would be looking to get back into the country. When do we expect tourists coming back to Australia?
Well, under Phase C of the national plan, Australians, permanent residents, we've got skilled migrants next, very important to us as well. So a lot of workers will be coming in coming weeks and months. We have our students have been prioritised over to tourists at the moment, and then tourists are next after that. So we'll have an announcement about that soon, but we want to get the students moving, of course, and students will have a priority before tourists, but then tourists are envisaged shortly after that as well.
Look, thank you so much, Minister, for giving us time. I understand you have a busy schedule, but before we go, any of the message for all the Australians sitting overseas or any of the people around the globe who want to come back to Australia?
Well, Australia is obviously ready. We're in the global competition for the best people, capital and ideas. You're welcome to come here. We will open our borders. Australia is a great cohesive society, a great place to invest, visit, and we welcome migrants from all around the world every year.
Have been wonderful talking to Minister Alex Hawke. Thank you so much. Once again, on behalf of my whole team, Shobna Khanna and Tarun Yadav, we sincerely thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
जी हाँ, आज हमने की मिनिस्टर एलेक्स हॉक से बातचीत और मैं आपका नवनीत. Thank you.
Thank you, Navneet.
Fiji Times. Be with the times.